The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by DiCamillo. Chapter 22. It was dusk, and Edward was walking down a sidewalk. He was walking on his own, putting one foot in front of the other without any assistance from anybody. He was wearing a fine suit made of red silk. He walked down the sidewalk, and then he turned onto a path that led up to a house with lighted windows. I know this house, thought Edward. This is Abeline's house. I'm on Egypt Street. Okay, time out a second. Let's look at that picture again and let's think about what we just saw. There's Edward walking up to the street, the house on Egypt Street. What is happening here? Last we heard, Edward's head was smashed in, and now he's there. What is happening? Is this real? Is it a dream? Or is it something else? What do you think? Go ahead, tell the screen. Maybe. We'll find out. Time in. I know this house, thought Edward. This is Abeline's house. I'm on Egypt Street. Lucy came running out the front door of the house, barking and jumping and wagging her tail. Down, girl, said a deep, gruff voice. Edward looked up, and there was Bull standing at the door. Hello, Malone, said Bull. Hello, good old rabbit pie. We've been waiting for you. Bull swung the door wide, and Edward walked inside. Abeline was there, and Nellie, and Lawrence, and Bryce. Susanna, called Nellie. Jangles, said Bryce. Edward, said Abeline. She held out her arms to him. But Edward stood still. She looked around the room. You searching for Sarah Ruth? Bryce asked. Edward nodded. You got to go outside if you want to see Sarah Ruth, said Bryce. So they all went outside, Lucy and Bull and Nellie and Lawrence and Bryce and Abeline and Edward. Right there, said Bryce. He pointed up at the stars. Yep, said Lawrence. That is the Sarah Ruth constellation. He picked Edward up and put him on his shoulder. You can see it right there. Edward felt a pang of sorrow, deep and sweet and familiar. Why did she have to be so far away? If only I had wings, he thought, I could fly to her. Out of the corner of his eye, the rabbit saw something flutter. Edward looked over his shoulder, and there they were, the most magnificent wings he had ever seen, orange and red and blue and yellow, and they were on his back. They belonged to him. They were his wings. What a wonderful night this was. He was walking on his own. He had an elegant new suit, and now he had wings. He could fly anywhere, do anything. Why had he never realized it before? His heart soared inside of him. He spread his wings and flew off Lawrence's shoulders, out of his hands, and up into the nighttime sky, toward the stars, toward Sarah Ruth. No, shouted Abeline. Catch him, said Bryce. Edward flew higher. Lucy barked. Malone, shouted Bull, and with a terrific lunge, he grabbed hold of Edward's feet and pulled him out of the sky and wrestled him to the earth. You can't go yet, said Bull. Stay with us, said Abeline. Edward beat his wings, but it was no use. Bull held him firmly to the ground. Stay with us, repeated Abeline. Edward started to cry. I couldn't stand to lose you again, said Nellie. Neither could I, said Abeline. It would break my heart. Lucy bent her face to Edward's. She licked his tears away. What was that? So there's a time out there. What was that? We know a lot. Obviously, it looks like Abeline's a little girl again, and is that possible for her to be a little girl? I mean, he's been gone for a while. Remember, he was with Bull for 7 years, and for them all to be together does seem a little unusual. Is it heaven? Is it a dream? Yeah. I think more importantly, is why is Sarah Ruth not there? Why is she up in the stars? And why does Edward want to fly to see her? And why does everybody stop him? Why does Bull and Abilene and Nellie and Bryce, why do they all stop him from flying into the sky? Let's keep on reading. Time in. Chapter 23. Exceedingly well made, said the man who was running a warm cloth over Edward's face. A work of art, I would say. A surpassingly, unbelievably dirty work of art, but art nonetheless. And dirt can be dealt with, just as your broken head has been dealt with. Edward looked into the eyes of the man. Ah, there you are, the man said. I can see that you're listening now. Your head was broken. I fixed it. I brought you back from the world of the dead. My heart, thought Edward, my heart is broken. No need to thank me, the man said. It's my job, quite literally. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Lucius Clark, dollmender. Your head, may I tell you? Will it upset you? Well, I always say the truth must be met head on, no pun intended. Your head, young sir, was in 21 pieces. 21 pieces, Edward repeated mindlessly. Lucius Clark nodded. 21, he said. All right, time out. Before we move any further, it does appear that Lucius Clark can actually talk to Edward and that he knows Edward's consciousness. He's looking at him and he's talking to him and he says, oh, there you are, as if he's talking to him. And then, and it seems like he can hear Edward's thoughts. That's also very unusual. But you know what? Pellegrina was possibly able to do that too. There's something about this skill, I don't know what it is, that sometimes people just are open to hearing the voices of toys like Edward. Let's keep on reading. Time in. Lucius Clark nodded. 21, he said. All modesty aside, I must admit that a lesser dollmender, a dollmender without my skills, might not have been able to rescue you. But let's not speak of what might have been. Let us speak instead of what is. You are whole. You have been pulled back from the brink of oblivion by your humble servant, Lucius Clark. And here, Lucius Clark put his hand on his chest and bowed deeply over Edward. This was quite a speech to wake up to, and Edward lay on his back trying to absorb it. He was on a wooden table. He was in a room with sunshine pouring in from high windows. His head, apparently, had been in 21 pieces and now was put back together into one. He was not wearing a red suit. In fact, he had no clothes on at all. He was naked again. And he did not have wings. And then he remembered Bryce, the diner, Neil swinging him through the air. Bryce. You are wondering perhaps about your young friend, said Lucius. The one with the continually running nose. Yes, he brought you here, weeping, begging for my assistance. Put him together again, he said. Put him back together. I told him, I said, young sir, I am a businessman. I can put your rabbit back together again. For a price. The question is, can you pay this price? He could not. Of course, he could not. He said that he could not. I told him then that he had two options, only two. The first option being that he seek assistance elsewhere. Option 2 was that I would fix you to the very best of my considerable abilities, and then you would become mine. His no longer, but mine. Here Lucius fell silent. He nodded, agreeing with himself. Two options only, he said. And your friend chose option 2. He gave you up so that you could be healed. Extraordinary, really. Bryce, thought Edward. Lucius Clark clapped his hands together. But no worries, my friend, no worries. I fully intend to keep up my end of the bargain. I will restore you to what I perceive to be your former glory. You shall have rabbit fur ears and a rabbit fur tail. Your whiskers will be repaired and replaced. Your eyes repainted to a bright and stunning blue. You will be clothed in the finest of suits. And then, someday, I will reap the return of my investment in you. All in good time. All in good time. In the doll business, we have a saying: there is real time and there is doll time. You, my fine friend, have entered doll time. Time out again. I have a text-to-text connection with this. Maybe you do too. A lot of this book has reminded me of a movie series called Toy Story, in the Toy Story series. Specifically, Toy Story 2, if you haven't seen it, you should give it a shot, where the main character, Woody, is a cowboy doll who ends up in the hands of a toy collector who wants to eventually sell him to a museum for lots of money. And Lucius doesn't seem like a bad guy, he just seems like an investor. So that sometimes that will happen with you, where you'll read a book and it will remind you of something else that you've read or seen, and that's called a connection. So when you're reading, try to be aware of that sometimes you might be able to understand something better if you relate it to something else that you've seen or read. Let's keep on going. Time in. Chapter 24. There's Bryce. And so Edward Tulane was mended, put together again, cleaned and polished, dressed in an elegant suit, and placed on a high shelf for display. From this shelf, Edward could see the whole shop, Lucius Clark's workbench, and the windows to the outside world, and the door that the customers used to enter and leave. From this shelf, Edward saw Bryce open the door one day and stand in the threshold, the silver harmonica in his left hand flashing brilliantly in the sunlight flooding in through the windows. "Young sir," said Lucius, "I am afraid that we made a deal." There he is. "Can't I see him?" asked Bryce. He wiped his hand across his nose, and the gesture filled Edward with a terrible feeling of love and loss. "I just want to look at him." Lucius Clark sighed. "You may look," he said. "You may look, and then you must go and not come back. I cannot have you in my shop every day mooning over what you have lost." "Yes, sir," said Bryce. Lucius sighed again. He got up from his workbench and went to Edward's shelf and picked him up and held him so that Bryce could see him. "Hey, Jangles," said Bryce. "You look good. Last time I seen you, you looked terrible. Your head was busted in and—" He is put together again," said Lucius, "as I promised you he would be." Bryce nodded. He wiped his hand across his nose. "Can I hold him?" he asked. "No," said Lucius. Bryce nodded again. "Tell him goodbye," said Lucius Clark. "He is repaired. He has been saved. Now you must tell him goodbye." "Goodbye," said Bryce. "Don't go," thought Edward. "I won't be able to bear it if you go." "And now you must leave," said Lucius Clark. "Yes, sir," said Bryce, but he stood without moving, looking at Edward. "Go," said Lucius Clark. "Go." "Please," thought Edward, "don't." Bryce turned. He walked through the door of the doll mender's shop. The door closed. The bell tinkled, and Edward was alone. Interesting to see that Edward now looks like the way he used to look like in the very beginning of the book. So he looks exactly the same. He's going to even wear fine suits. But is he the same on the inside? When you write in your reading journal, you might want to write about how Edward has completely changed. His inside and his outside don't match anymore.